Hey everybody, this is John. Welcome to the free video. So let's look at a couple of things here. Peloton had a couple of questions on stocks like this, like, hey, how do you find these and how do you get in advance? Or, something like CHTG, how do you find those? How do you get in advance? So we'll take a look at that. Another one here is work. Like this is one that we've been in for a little while, waiting to see if this thing can do something. We did kind of get a move going today. Of course, is it going to last? Are we going to be able to go? Or, what's the company going to announce? And then from there, why consider, so that's obviously long side trades, but then on the short side, why consider something like IWM? Okay, why consider something like IWT, which is transports? Aren't these companies, if we're looking at this, and here we're looking at a weekly chart and we're looking at a daily and a 30-minute, and maybe it's not necessarily a no-brainer that some of these are going to go higher or some of these are going to go lower, but really what this is about putting the odds in your favor. Okay, and another good example here is the 30-year bonds, and I like to look at the 30-year bond futures. They really tell you kind of like what the big money, what the smart money thinks of the future. And we want to know, is there buying pressure in the bonds or is there selling pressure? And of course, as a trader, if you're trading options, you can trade this through TLT. And we did have some big selling the other day, but guess what? That was because there was an auction. And now, boom, it's absorbed and we're heading back higher. So I actually, I am actually looking for TLT to come up to back to about 175 or so. But how can we feel comfortable in that? And typically what I have found is that the comfort level in that comes from having access to multiple time frames and looking at things like the squeeze. So like on the squeeze here, like here on this weekly chart, there was a weekly squeeze at this time. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, there's not one now, but there's a daily squeeze, right? Okay, so what's going on there? And then what's going on a 30-minute? And while the weekly and the daily and the 30-minute can give you a decent snapshot, I want to show you something pretty cool here that I think you're going to like. All right, so one of the things here was like, okay, for work, I talked about how, okay, yeah, I'm looking at a daily chart. I got a 30-minute chart and a 5-minute chart and trying to time it right. And I can see here that there's a daily squeeze and I can see what the momentum is doing. At this point, it looks like it's going to fire off long and maybe we get some upside out of that. We can see here that there's a 30-minute squeeze that fired here, nice little heads up there. Little 5-minute squeeze developing at the end of the day. And so when I look at stuff like this, what I found though is that sometimes I'll miss something because I wasn't looking at the larger time frames, okay? Or I missed the time frames in between. So it's like, okay, so how, what do I do with that? Okay, so an example I gave recently was on the biggest trade I've made this year. And the biggest trade I made this year was on Amazon, and I'll show you this in a second. But what I did was I was looking at the Squeeze Pro on 18 time frames, monthly, weekly, 4-day, 3-day, 2-day, daily, all the way down to the 1 minute. And something really lined up right in here across all these time frames, and I only saw it because I happened to be looking at all these charts, and I honestly got a headache after about 20 minutes. So much information. But you'll see that the result was pretty awesome. I mean, on this one trade, I netted $611,000, and had I held on to it, it would have been a 7-figure trade. But it's been my biggest trade of the year, and I held it overnight, and it was great. But the question is, hey, I would like to replicate that, exactly what happened there, but I'd like it to be a lot easier. So what I was looking at was the squeezes on all 18 time frames, and so I had Eric basically take all those squeezes and compress them so I could look at it on one time frame. So you can see I've got the 1 minute, 2 minute, 3, 4, 5, 10, all the way to the monthly. And so if the monthly is red, that means there's a red squeeze. If this is on the S&Ps, of course. If it's green, it means there's no squeeze, like that's green, right? If it's black, that means there's a black squeeze. Now, of course, what we're looking at here is the 1 minute chart, but I can see, wow, there's a 4-hour squeeze, there's a 15-minute squeeze, etc., right? So I found that to be super helpful because now I didn't have to look at all 18 of those time frames, but the problem was I still didn't know like the histogram, i.e. if there's a squeeze and histogram's above 0 in light blue, it's bullish, bam, but I wouldn't know that from looking at this. All right, so what he did is he just took, so like here's IWM, right? So on IWM there's a monthly squeeze, there's a 2-day squeeze, there's a daily squeeze, there's a 30-minute squeeze, etc., etc. but I can't see the histograms on all these. I can only see the histograms on the 1 minute chart because I'm looking at the 1 minute chart. And so Eric said, well, how about this? Bam. And now here's the same chart. And instead of being trapped of just being able to look if there's a squeeze or not, now you can see the squeezes along the top, and on the bottom you can see the histogram color. Guess what? There's a monthly squeeze with a red histogram. Okay, red is bearish. If there's a squeeze and it's red, you're expecting it to fall. All right, and so that all of a sudden became a game changer. So you can see it on this Amazon now. It's like, oh wow, there's a monthly red squeeze, there's a 4-hour squeeze. You know, all the momentum on the larger time frames is like light blue, so we're actually expecting it to continue going higher. And I just find that that is a priceless amount of information that can give me an edge in this market, you know, versus looking at all 18 time frames. Because literally before, what I had to do was, like, here's Amazon. It's an eyesore, right? You can't even see it. There's the monthly chart. Oh, there's a squeeze and the histogram's above zero. Okay, and gosh, here is the, you know, I can't even read it, it's so small, but here's the 4-hour chart, and here's a squeeze, and the momentum's yellow. Now, if it's below zero in yellow, that means it's rising. That's bullish, okay? So now, instead of looking at all that, I can come over here and say, oh, okay, there's a monthly squeeze, right? And let's see, let's drag this over here. There is a monthly squeeze, and voila, the histogram's light blue, right? Okay, so monthly squeeze, histogram's light blue. There's a 4-hour squeeze, etc., etc. So now I can just look at all of this at a glance and decide in 2 seconds if that's something I want to take or not. So for example, work, i.e. Slack, this is a stock that we've been in, but if you look on this chart, because there's a weekly squeeze, a 4-day squeeze, a 3-day squeeze, a 2-day squeeze, a daily squeeze, a 4-hour squeeze, and on all those time frames, the momentum is above zero and rising. That's incredibly bullish, okay? And we've been sitting on a position for a while, and who knows, we had a good rally today. We'll see what it does tomorrow. But anyway, that's just, I wanted to share this tool with you guys. Okay, so what is this? Well, these are some tools that have been created. I'm going to be teaching a class about them. The tools do come with the class. So if you go to simplertrading.com/hidden, this is based on the Squeeze Pro. If you've already got the Squeeze Pro, that's awesome. These tools will basically, it's like, you know, adding turbocharge to your 911. So the basic is $697. We'll do the strategy class on May 16th. So what is that, in 8 days? But it'll also include the multi-squeeze pro indicator. That's all the 18 time frames across the top that tell you whether whether or not there's a squeeze, and if it's red, black, or orange. And then, of course, we'll have a bonus setup with Eric. The pro includes all of that, plus live trading, plus the histogram. Okay, that histogram to me is a huge game changer. And then the elite includes all of that plus an additional 2 days of live trading. So why the live trading? Because you get to see how it's used. What do I look for? How am I setting it up? It gives you that field practice. Plus, the goal during the class is to make enough money to pay for it. Also, there's a 30-day trial to our web-based scanner because we're incorporating the Squeeze Pro into that, and I'll show you how to essentially pinpoint trades with that. So to me, you guys saw the Amazon trade, $611,000. This is how I found it and had the confidence to hold on to it. So I think this is going to be a game changer for a lot of people. If you go to simplertrading.com/hidden, it'll bring you to this page, and you'll be able to get registered and start getting the information, and we will knock this out of the park. All right? You guys have a fantastic evening, and we'll see you at the next update.